collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, where to now for Cyprus reunification?
The current generation is unable to embrace peace for most. Peace is not something that you sprinkle on top of the cake. Peace is the cake.
Our health minister is committed to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Direct access to every single resident of Cyprus to a high-standing health service for everyone.
Major traffic flow changes in Nicosia are in the pipeline.
So we are mainly focused on public transport, on cycling, on pedestrians. So we need to change the mentality and to make the step of leap of faith maybe towards other means of transport instead of the car.
Citizens are fighting to ensure the new Eleftheria Square is car-free.
The protection of the environment, the enhancement of the social fabric of the city, the decrease of cars, the decrease of noise and the decrease of fumes.
And we talk to the Business Development Director of CSR Europe about sustainable goals for small businesses.
Surviving as a business, you need to be future-looking and ready to change. And I think that the SDGs give an inspiration to your employees to embrace that change.
Well, we could say the dust has settled, sort of, on the Cyprus reunification talks, which of course failed in Switzerland last week. The news came through a little bit too late for last week's programme, but one of the people who was in Switzerland as part of a citizens' movement called Unite Cyprus Now was Andreas Lordos. He joins us to tell us about his experience. Andreas, first of all, just explain how you got to go to Crans-Montana, because I think you had a bit of help from Sir Stelios.
Yes, Unite Cyprus Now is a citizen grassroots movement which came to being spontaneously when the road to Geneva was derailed. After the road to Geneva, or to what eventually became Crans, was restored, we continued protesting by showing by example that the people of Cyprus can actually live together, have a common voice, and that the problem that we see today is not due to the people, but it is of other origins, which at the end of the day trample over the human rights of most of the citizens of Cyprus for more than half a century now. At Crans-Montana, our wish to attend there was made through by Sir Stelios Kajuanu, to whom we're thankful. We basically contacted him directly, because the foundation that he's in charge of has a certain mechanism that does not allow for speed. So Sir Stelios acted with speed, and 10 of us, gender balanced and in various other ways balanced, Greek and Turkish speaking Cypriot people, found ourselves just on the outside of the conference hall where the negotiations were taking place.
What was your aim? You went there with your flags, your signs, your banners, and I think you were waving furiously at all the people coming and going from the conference. What reaction did you get?
Yes, the aim of the exercise was to remind all of these technocrats, legal and other experts, that their work would ultimately have a significant impact on real people. And we were a mere sample of the people of Cyprus that have been suffering an all-or-nothing approach for such a long time. For the whole, we were treated with graciousness and with respect, with the position overall being that our presence is valuable, that we're on the right side of history, standing up on behalf of citizens who have been left outside the peace process for half a century, with the result being that the communities still are not as close together as they should be. Other than that, there were some diplomatic games played upon Unite Cyprus Now, which we're not thankful about.
Like what?
Well, the visit by Mr. Çavuşoğlu, the Turkish foreign minister, who stated during one of our usual live transmissions his own position, that namely the Turkey is a step forward and the Greek Cypriot side is basically not. That created animosity on behalf of the Greek Cypriot community against Unite Cyprus Now. And then Mr. Çavuşoğlu himself denounced Unite Cyprus now, saying that, well, I never gave them the right to broadcast anything, and I just went over there, but he had 30 people around him with big cameras and the rest of it, and we thought it was fair game that we would also be transmitting. So that left a bitter taste as to how citizens are still being treated. And it was, in our view, an unjustified reaction on behalf of the Greek Cypriot community, because Mr. Kochas had already spoken to us not once but 3 times.
This is one of the problems, isn't it? We've still got this seesaw idea here that, it's not fair because they did it, or they had more to say than the others, so it's not fair on us. I mean, how can we get over this rather childish mindset and look at the big picture?
The current generation has to leave. The current generation is unable to embrace peace for most. Peace is not something that you sprinkle on top of the cake. Peace is the cake. And once peace is embraced, from there on, each action, large or small, has a framework which guides it, and from this emanates trust, which is the number one ingredient necessary in a divided country. And trust is not here, and it has not been here, and our leaderships collectively are to blame for this.
Okay, you're trying to build the trust with this Unite Cyprus Now movement, but you also, I think, while you were in Switzerland, did have meetings with some of the players in the rooms who were sitting at those 2 tables. So what did you glean from them? Were they forthcoming with how things were going? You did at one point, like everybody else, I think, seem very hopeful that this time, maybe finally, a solution would be agreed, and then it all went wrong.
Yes, starting from the end of your statement, we were hopeful because being a European nation, we were hopeful that Europe would stand up for the citizens of Europe, since the overall emphasis is on undertoning the national identity and raising to a pedestal the European citizenship. My view is that Europe has been by far absent from the proceedings. They have not come on over to visit us. They were one of the notable absences. We have to congratulate the United Nations to the extent that they have always been supportive and helpful, starting from the buffer zone and continuing through to maintaining regular contact with us on a human level to see if we were okay, which we appreciated. From the local side now, the Turkish Cypriot parties invited us for an interview which was broadcast live. We have had 3 leaders together, which was the Democratic Party leader, Serdar Denktaş. It was the CHTP and TDP leaders all together. And we were greeted and treated courteously, and the discussion was open and frank. And the situation did revolve around trust to a large extent.
So what can you do now? I've heard that you might be considering legal action about returns to properties and so on. What is the next step?
Well, the next step is for us to summarize what has been a long process of 2 months within which we have become family. Unite Cyprus now is a family, and we're very proud of our grassroots independent profile, which we feel that we should maintain.
Yeah, let's just say there, for people who aren't aware, that there have been calls for you to maybe form a political party or an NGO, and I think that's been discounted as being counterproductive. Are you still meeting in the buffer zone every night?
We're still meeting in the buffer zone every night. We are live on Facebook for those that are far away from us and for those that want to follow us. So becoming a party or an NGO or something is something that will be discussed. But the feeling that I get at this stage is that people would like to remain inclusive as they are, and basically allow the freedom of expression to each and everyone, which is something that parties, at least in Cyprus, do not do.
So that's Andreas Lordos, who's one of the founding members of Unite Cyprus now. They were in Crans-Montana to make the citizens of Cyprus' voice heard, whatever the language they speak. We'll doubtless talk to him again about reunification on this lovely island.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Health Minister George Bamboridis was a keynote speaker at a conference in Nicosia last week, talking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as they're known, in the health sector. I caught up with him as he was leaving the conference and asked him how he would incorporate the SDGs into Cyprus health policy.
Well, we are all focused now as a country, as a nation, to the SDGs set by the UN. And as you already know, SDG number 3 is about health. Health is, and accessibility to health is the main aim of our policy, and we intend to serve it as good as we can. And to this effect, we welcome the legislation passed by the Parliament a couple of weeks ago on the introduction of the autonomization of the hospitals and the national health system, and we are proceeding to break all the barriers which do not allow us to give direct access to every single resident of Cyprus to a high-standing health service for everyone.
But the Sustainable Development Goals, how do they fit into the framework of the health service?
Well, if you go through the goals, you will see that there cannot be any kind of sustainable development unless you provide exactly this, a universal health cover to all citizens without any barriers, which gives direct, equitable access to everyone according to their needs. And this is what we're trying to achieve.
Health Minister George Bamboridis.
Get in touch with the Cyprus News Digest by emailing cyprusnewsdigest@gmail.com.
We're about to see some major changes to the traffic in our capital city. Nasos Kolivas is the Nicosia municipality's transportation engineer, and he joins us to talk about plans to turn Gallipolios Avenue into a one-way system going up, and in the future, Makarios Avenue, the main artery into town, into a one-way system going down. So Nasos, this is obviously the result of considerable study. When are you going to start changing Gallipolios Avenue?
As you know, the procurement of Gallipolios Avenue has just been on from the Public Works Department on the air. Hopefully by the next year, the early new year, we will expect to start the works that they have to do in Gallipolios, which is the first phase of the whole project that you just mentioned, the one-way system of Gallipolios and Makariou.
Now, when you say you've got to do works, what have you got to do? Because surely if you're just removing the down traffic, then you've got two lanes going up.
Yes, when we say works, it's not only just a traffic change of the system, we are talking about a complete regeneration of the street. As you know now, we don't have enough pedestrian crossings, we don't have what the people need to walk around Gallipolios. We have cement, we have asphalt layers, it is totally mixed up. It is a problem that we are facing as Nicosia municipality the last 20-25 years. So we just made a bold decision in order to have a complete regeneration for the pedestrians. We are facing like 50,000 square meters total renewal of pedestrian footpath for the pedestrians. We are going to have for the drain water, there is not any existing system for the drain water now in Gallipolios. So a total 3 kilometers of new pipes are going to be implemented. All the new light poles, LED technology, more than 100 of them. Pedestrian crossings, traffic lights, everything that we have to do in order to provide to the citizen a new avenue, a new street that they deserve.
Okay, but one that's safe for pedestrians too. You said LED lighting. What about solar lighting?
Unfortunately, yet the technology we cannot support for the traffic lights to be also the traffic lights and the lights of the street lights. Yes, it is too much expensive still in order to maintain them and to hold them operating for like 5 to 10 years. We know we have tried in some parts when we decided to build the cycleway in Engomi from the department, and we tried to do that. It is totally different to have the lights for the road, for an avenue, and totally different to use it for like a lighter mode of transport. So yet we follow the LED, which is like 70% fewer energy. The consumption that we were going to have is going to be 70% down. So first point we go with LED, and then slowly, as the technology emerges, to have a complete system with solar, but it's not yet the decision that we can only say that we're going to use the LED technology.
Right, now let's talk about Makarios Avenue.
Yes.
That's a little bit further down the line, because first you're going to finish Galibolios, I take it. But once you open Galibolios as only going up, for example, you're going to have a problem, are you not, with more cars using Makarios to come down.
Yes.
So it's really important, isn't it, that that follows on as quickly as possible?
Exactly. We have done several studies, as you mentioned before, traffic studies with traffic modeling, and we know what we are going to expect. So by the phasing of construction of Galibolios Avenue, Makarios, as you said correctly, is going to work in both ways. But before the last part of Galibolios will finish, the phase D, then we will start changing some minor corrections in traffic lights in Makarios, and with painting the horizontal and the vertical signage. So when Galibolios will finish, Makarios will also finish. So from the first stage together, they're going to work as one way. The main and the bold thing that we are experiencing in Makarios Avenue, we're going to have bus lanes. So the 4 lanes that we have in Makarios Avenue now, we're going to have the 2 lanes again for the traffic to go inbound, and on the side of the curbs, we're going to have one side, 1 bus lane going inbound, and 1 contraflow bus lane going towards aluminium towers.
So in actual fact, Makarios will be in 2 directions, but only for buses?
Yes, and that is the main thing that we are following the IMMP studies, the Integrated Mobility Master Plan of the studies that we have done several years now. So we are mainly focused on public transport, on cycling, on pedestrians. So we need to change the mentality and to make the step of leap of faith maybe towards other means of transport instead of the car.
And the date for that?
Fingers crossed it's going to be in 2 years from now, but you never know with procurements what is going on. It's totally difficult for us to say a date and to be punctual on that. The procurement period is with the whole procurement period, maybe it's going to be like 3 or 4 months, but as you know, as our experience has shown us that all the second and the third in ranking for those that are going to be then on the construction, they go to the court and they say, no, we need to make a recall and to check again. So I'm not sure if I will tell you 2 years, maybe it's not correct. If I tell you 3 years, again, it's not correct. We are facing an 18 months of construction plus the 6 months of the typical procurement period, so it's 24 months, 2 years. But fingers crossed, we never know what's going to happen with the procedures. It's always about procedures.
It is indeed. And procedures of traffic changes coming our way, well, within a couple of years, hopefully, in the centre of Nicosia.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
The centre of Nicosia, Eleftheria Square, it's been the heart of the city for many, many years, is undergoing a total reconstruction. The work's been continuing now for something like 5 years, and they reckon it might be finished at the beginning of next year. But is it going to be pedestrianised, or will cars be allowed? There are some strong feelings. Zoe Lordos is one of the people who's been lobbying for it to be a pedestrian area. Zoe, why?
When the competition was awarded in 2005, it was supposed to be for pedestrians, and the signing of the contract stated for pedestrians. In 2008, the scope of the works changed. Some lobbying took place, and the municipal council changed the scope, and cars were supposed to pass from the bridge of the new square. Since then, the people who were not notified about this change of the decision and all the marketing that's happening about the square shows the bridge with pedestrians on it, which is misleading at this point because the decision for cars is still valid. So now the briefing is happening and we hope to change the decision again to go back to the pedestrians.
And what would be the benefit, do you say, for the citizens of Nicosia if cars were not allowed?
First of all, the money was given for the square to gain 3 or 4 points, which is the protection of the environment, the enhancement of the social fabric of the city, the decrease of cars, the decrease of noise, and the decrease of fumes. And that's why the money was given for it. Now, a square is the link of places. It links different areas, and this square specifically is going to link the old town with the new business center of Nicosia. A square is a representative of the city. In our capital, we have no squares. The Marcos Drago Square is a roundabout. The Lloyd George Square is a 3 or 4 streets intersection. We don't have squares.
So they want squares in the centre of Nicosia. Now, my understanding is that the council is split on this and that actually a majority are in favour of pedestrians, but 1 or 2 are very strongly against.
Yes, 2 of them are strongly against.
Do they give their reasons?
Some shop owners at Onasagoru claimed in 2007 that Onasagoru was like a ghetto. No business, they had no clients, they were close to bankruptcy. And since then they lobbied too hard, and that's when the decision changed.
But Onasagoru is a thriving street and it's pedestrianised.
Yeah, they thought that the access from the square was going to enhance their business there. But it didn't. What enhanced the business was the change of 2 policies that was made by the current mayor, which was allow the use of restaurants and cafes on Onasagoru and to decrease and to demand no car parkings for those applications. When this happened, as soon as he became a mayor, 6 months later all the shops were full with shops and new shops also, restaurants and bars. And since then the economy went up, and that was at 0 cost. None to the shop owners, none to the municipality, none to us as citizens. Yeah, and when we were on another radio show before Easter this year, again they called and said, Onasagoru is being a ghetto. That's why we object. And I said, a ghetto means crime. We don't have crime. We didn't have crime in 1999 when I started living here. A ghetto is not resolved by 2 lanes of cars on the square. A ghetto is resolved through social policy.
And that is Zoe Lordos, one of many people who are lobbying very hard indeed to make sure that the new Eleftheria Square remains, as it was promised when it started, a pedestrian area.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
Paula Byrne is Membership and Business Development Director at CSR Europe, and she was another keynote speaker at that conference last week in Nicosia. She told me what the thrust of her message was.
I think my main message was to promote the Sustainable Development Goals as a global language, a common framework in which to find partnerships and drive action, small and big.
It's a Europe-wide initiative. Where does Cyprus fall into this in terms of how far up the ladder are we?
I think that the Sustainable Development Goals are for citizens, for small businesses, for local communities, as much as they are for the global community, or the big business, or the big political unions, or so whether it's the European Union or the United Nations. And I think that Cyprus cannot underestimate the impact that it can have. They're still dealing with poverty, health issues, unemployment, lack of growth, as in all European countries, and I think that they're as much up the ladder as anyone.
So how do small and medium-sized businesses particularly embrace the SDGs? Because sometimes it can be costly, but it doesn't have to be. And presumably, I think it's been proved that consumers tend to value companies that are sustainable and have a good sort of policy as regards corporate social responsibility.
I couldn't agree more. I think from a point of view of small and medium businesses, they are, I would say, reticent, or they find it difficult to engage because of lack of time, lack of money, lack of, they're under a lot of pressures, and there aren't whole departments of people ready to set the strategies and do the work. But I think that they still have a lot of capacity to participate. I think they need to partner more with other businesses. I think it's much easier for them to transform because of their size and also their flexibility. They're much more flexible than bigger structures. And they're still one of the biggest employers, and they have the ideas, and they generate the ideas, and they have, as you say, that connection with their customers and their local markets. So they have a role to play. What I would say to small and medium businesses, and I know that I hear it all the time, and my colleagues across Europe hear it all the time, I don't have time, I don't have the space to do this, or I don't see the value for me and my little company.
And that's important, isn't it? If they don't think that it will bring value, then they're not going to bother. So how do you get the message across to them that this is actually something that can increase their business?
I think that's the main reason that we commissioned the publication, The Value for Europe, because to demonstrate in euros and the bottom line how much value is out there there is a new economy, there is a new, in terms of surviving as a business, you need to be future looking and ready to change. And I think that the SDGs give an inspiration to your employees to embrace that change. And I think that the bottom line and the money is to convince the finance people and convince the management to unlock the money. You need to, spend money to make money. So,
you mentioned businesses teaming up together. Now, how would that work? Can you give an example of how two small businesses that maybe can't go it alone could achieve some of the goals if they found a partner?
I think that's really a role we have network partners in 32 countries, and some of them are really small, one person, half a person. Some of them are volunteers. So those networks provide the places to meet, to bring your challenge, and there are always some way in your network to find other partners to work with. I've seen partnerships with very small companies, with very giant companies, and from what I talked about in the agility and the flexibility and the ingenuity of small companies is something that the bigger ones lose in their big structures. Their environment is not as open to change and new ideas as a smaller one. And I think that, for example, there can be very good partnerships there and change in innovations. You see a lot in renewable energy, a lot of small companies. That's where the technology lies. That's where the new ideas come from. And the scaling up is the issue. And I think then the scaling up has to come from partnership. That can be with two medium-sized small businesses or big and small. And I think one of the things in our incubator is that what we always have to bring in is with the big companies, we need also the social entrepreneurs to bring those ideas, because the big companies don't have the answers.
Paula Byrne, Membership and Business Development Director at CSR Europe. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.